What if I told you that the most mysterious new character in Zootopia 2, Gary the Snake, could hold the key to uncovering Zootopia's darkest secret? In the trailer, there's a blink and you'll miss it moment. But if you pause and really pay attention, it says everything. We see Gary slithering nervously through the streets of Zootopia, clutching a book in his mouth. His eyes dart around, terrified, until he mutters a line that sent the fandom into a frenzy. "I have to help my family." That single sentence could rewrite everything we know about Zootopia's world building. Why? Because reptiles, snakes, lizards, crocodiles, you name it, haven't been seen in Zootopia society. At least not in the first movie, that is. Think about it. In the first movie, we saw predators and prey living side by side, lions and sheep, wolves and deer, bunnies and foxes, but never once did we see a reptile. Not a single one. And that wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate choice. For thematic reasons, Disney kept reptiles out of Zootopia's design, focusing instead on warm-blooded mammals to highlight the predator-prey divide. By excluding reptiles entirely, the filmmakers left a gap that now feels intentional, like a hidden story waiting to be uncovered. And when Gary slithers into the city, the reaction is terrifyingly clear. Zootopia's citizens don't just avoid him, they panic. There's even a scene in the new trailer where Gary crawls out of a bag on a theater stage, and the moment the audience realizes what's in front of them, someone screams, "Snake!" The crowd erupts into chaos. Animals scatter, chairs fly. It's pure pandemonium. So what's going on here? Why are reptiles missing from Zootopia's so-called utopia? And why is everyone in Zootopia so afraid of Gary? Why is one snake risking everything to sneak in, book in hand, or should I say mouth, desperately trying to help his family? Today, we're diving deep into the potential hidden history of Zootopia, exploring why reptiles may have been banned, and breaking down 3 major theories that could explain Gary the Snake's role in the sequel. To really understand this mystery, we need to turn to the proof Disney has already given us. The Zootopia 2 trailer lays out a handful of subtle but crucial clues. First, there's Nick Wilde's line, "Snakes haven't set foot in Zootopia in forever." This is a big deal. Nick isn't the type to exaggerate for no reason. That phrasing suggests it's not just unusual to see a snake, it's almost unheard of, which means we're looking at years, maybe generations, of reptiles being absent from the city. Then, of course, there's the scene of Gary on stage. The audience's reaction tells us everything: fear, dread, and total panic. This isn't just, "Oh, a predator walked in." Remember, Zootopia's whole message is about overcoming fear between prey and predator. But this is different. It's universal rejection. Even predators in the crowd were terrified. So clearly there's a cultural or historical reason why reptiles don't belong in Zootopia. The city's harmony, predators and prey living together, seems to only apply to mammals, meaning reptiles are either 1. Banned outright from Zootopia, 2. Exiled or segregated into their own territory, or 3. Simply so distrusted that no reptile has dared enter in decades. And this is where the theories come in. The first theory to explain why there may be a ban on reptiles actually centers around a very ancient and symbolic theory. Snakes have always been associated with trickery, deceit, and danger. Think about the story of Adam and Eve. In many religions, a snake is the one who tempts humanity into eating the forbidden fruit. And because of that, snakes became a universal symbol of betrayal and corruption. What if Zootopia has its own version of this story? Imagine, long before the events of the first movie, there was a reptile who deceived mammals in some catastrophic way. Maybe a snake manipulated both predators and prey into a conflict. Maybe a reptile sparked a war, using their cunning nature to pit groups against each other. In this version, snakes, and reptiles by extension, could have been branded as untrustworthy, a danger to society itself. And over time, that prejudice hardened into law. Reptiles weren't just feared, they were banned. This would explain the instinctive panic we see in the trailer. Fear that isn't just about predators, but about a deeper cultural story that's been passed down for generations. And here's the kicker. Gary carrying that mysterious book might tie into this. What if it's a historical record? What if the banished reptiles are in immediate danger and need to relocate? And Gary is looking for a way to save his family by accessing these historical records that could lead them to safety? Maybe he is trying to find a way for his kind to survive outside Zootopia. Perhaps that book he carries isn't just a record of the past, but a guide to survival, a lifeline for banished reptiles struggling on the outskirts of Zootopia, much like the hyenas in The Lion King. And if that's true, then it ties directly back to our central question. Were reptiles banned from Zootopia, forced to live on the margins, and left to fend for themselves? And if so, the story doesn't end there, because another explanation could lie not in history, but in geography, the possibility of an entire reptile city of their own. Now, this second theory takes a slightly different angle. Maybe reptiles aren't banned. Maybe instead, they just live elsewhere. Zootopia, after all, is designed specifically for mammals. It has tundra zones, desert zones, rainforest zones, all habitats built for warm-blooded animals. But reptiles are cold-blooded. They They need heat regulation, specialized environments, and different resources. So what if reptiles developed their own city, separate from Zootopia? A reptilian metropolis built to suit their unique needs. Blistering deserts, heat lamps, hot springs, everything designed for their cold-blooded biology. This could be a solid explanation for why a separate reptilian Zootopia might exist. However, it doesn't seem as likely when you consider how the mammalian Zootopia already integrates so many different mammals with vastly different needs into one environment, which means that a more likely reason for a reptilian city existing wouldn't be biological at all, but rather political. What if reptiles not only have different laws, but drastically different viewpoints than the mammals, similar to the difference between a democratic society and an autocratic or totalitarian society? Since cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals have different ways of living, this could mean they also have different cultural values as well. Maybe in the reptilian city, strength and cunning rule. Maybe they believe in survival of the fittest, instead of Zootopia's message of harmony. That would create tension, and possibly explain why mammals distrust them. When you think about it, mammals in Zootopia have been taught cooperation and equality, while reptiles might live by a harsher code. That ideological clash could have made integration impossible. So instead, the two societies split. Mammals got Zootopia, reptiles got their own territory, and now Gary is breaking the rule by crossing that boundary. His desperate cry, "I have to help my family," could mean his reptilian city is in danger, and Zootopia holds the key to saving them. Now, when it comes to the third and final theory, this is by far the darkest one. Maybe reptiles weren't banned or given their own city willingly. Maybe they were segregated, forced out of Zootopia after a violent past. This one is like a combination of the first two theories, but with a darker twist. Think about it. Zootopia has always been presented as a utopia, but the first film showed us cracks in that image. Prey and predator prejudice still exists. There's a history of distrust. What if reptiles were the first victims of that fear? Long ago, maybe mammals united to drive reptiles out. Maybe there was an incident, a mass attack, a betrayal, or even just fear of their differences that caused reptiles to be seen as the other, since they didn't directly fit into the mammalian prey and predator system. Instead of solving the issue, mammals chose exclusion. Reptiles were expelled, walled off, and forgotten. Over time, this became normalized. Reptiles don't belong here. This would explain Nick's line. Snakes haven't set foot in Zootopia in forever. Not because they can't survive there, not because they don't want to, but because they were systematically segregated, erased from the city's society. Gary's arrival, then, isn't just shocking. It's rebellious. It's the return of a group that Zootopia worked hard to suppress. His very presence is a challenge to the city's carefully crafted image of unity. So, what do these theories mean for the movie? Gary DeSnake could be the key to one of the most important themes in Zootopia, the limits of tolerance. The first film was all about predator versus prey. But what happens when the conflict isn't just about mammals, but about an entire class of animals excluded from the system? If reptiles were banned, segregated, or exiled, then Gary's journey could force Judy and Nick to confront the fact that Zootopia isn't as inclusive as they thought. The city may have built itself on unity, but only for mammals. That revelation would shatter the idealized image of Zootopia, exposing the hidden prejudice lurking beneath its polished surface. It would also raise new questions about how far the city is willing to go to protect its harmony, and at whose expense. In other words, Gary's story could reveal that the city's so-called utopia was built on exclusion all along. This would be a brilliant expansion of the original movie's themes. It would push the metaphor deeper, showing that discrimination doesn't just vanish, it evolves. First, it was predators versus prey. Now it's mammals versus reptiles. And in the middle of it all, one scared snake with a book might be the spark that changes everything. The trailer clearly shows that reptiles aren't part of Zootopia's society, and Nick's line plus the audience's reaction to Gary prove it. Theory 1 suggests reptiles were banned due to symbolic associations with trickery and evil, echoing the biblical serpent. Theory 2 suggests reptiles live in a separate city, split from Zootopia because of possibly biology, but more likely ideology. Theory 3 suggests reptiles were segregated, forced out of Zootopia after a dark history of conflict. No matter which theory is true, one thing is certain. Gary DeSnake isn't just a side character. He's a symbol of something much bigger. His story could redefine everything we know about Zootopia's history and force the city to face its darkest secret. But what do you think? Were reptiles banned, exiled, or segregated? And do you think Gary's book holds the key to rewriting Zootopia's history? Definitely let me know in the comments below.